My wife cheated on me with the owner of our son's school. When I discovered it, I revealed everything during the graduation and left her on her knees begging for forgiveness. My name is Gabriel. I am 36 years old and I work as an IT technician. I have always been a calm, methodical person and very focused on everything working correctly, both in my services and at home. I am the type who prefers peace to reason, you know? I pride myself on being a good father and a current husband. I have always tried to stay up to date, both in technology and in family life. Despite being tired from work, I never stopped looking for quality time with my family. I thought that was enough, that simply being present was enough to keep everything stable. My wife's name is Camila. She is 34 years old. She is a psychologist and was always seen as a centered, educated, and somewhat reserved woman. She worked part-time at a clinic and dedicated the rest of her time to taking care of our son's things and the house. She was the type of woman all the neighbors praised. Do you know the one who always has a smile on her face and a sweet word for everyone? That was Camila. But now, looking back, maybe that smile was more of a facade than I wanted to admit. The truth is that I saw her as a life partner, or, at least, I thought I did. Our son, Lucas, is 7 years old and studies at a private school that has a good reputation, you know? Nothing luxurious, but we adjusted the budget a bit to give him the best possible education. He was always very intelligent, curious, and learned a lot from his mother's intelligence. It was because of the school's proximity to the house and the structure it offered that we decided to enroll him there. The school was modern, full of extracurricular activities, with well-trained teachers, and with an owner whom, until then, I had only known from a distance. A kind man, always well-dressed, but something about him always bothered me, even before anything else. Camila and I have been together for 11 years. We met in a first aid course when she was still in university, and I was working freelance setting up the computers for the event. From the beginning, there was a strange connection, intense, but at the same time peaceful. We completed each other. She was emotion, I was reason. She was fire, I was earth. And for a long time that worked. We got married after 3 years of dating and lived that perfect couple dream for a long time. We had Lucas 2 years after the wedding, and we thought that would be the pinnacle of our happiness. Our routine was more or less stable. I worked from home most of the week and attended to clients remotely. She left in the morning and returned in the early afternoon. After lunch, we used to share chores and pay attention to Lucas. On weekends, we had simple plans: movies, the park, visiting relatives. We were not the most in love couple in the world, but the partnership seemed solid. Of course, sometimes there were silly fights, but nothing out of the ordinary. Until, without me noticing at first, this harmony began to crumble little by little. The atmosphere at Lucas's school was modern, with frequent parent meetings and educational events. And it was at one of these meetings that I first saw, with attention, the owner of the school. His name was Mauricio, a man about 40 years old, charismatic, the type of guy who charms anyone with just a handshake. He spoke wonderfully, dressed even better, and knew exactly how to manipulate the environment. Always very polite to everyone. But he had that kind of charm that crosses the professional line. At that moment, I thought I was exaggerating a little. I did not know to what extent he would become part of my story in the worst possible way. It started very subtly, almost imperceptibly. Camila has always been methodical, organized, with well-defined schedules, but suddenly she started arriving late from the clinic. First it was 15 minutes, then 30, then an hour or more. She always came with a prepared excuse: a patient in crisis, a last-minute meeting, a traffic jam. At first, I believed without a doubt. After all, she was a psychologist, and these things could really happen. But the problem was her gaze. She no longer looked me in the eyes as before. I started to feel those uncomfortable butterflies in my stomach. It did not take long for me to realize that she also started to dress up more. I swear I am not a jealous or controlling type of man, but I know my wife. She never wore much makeup or more daring clothes to go to work. Suddenly, she was investing in new clothes, expensive perfumes, and makeup, even on her days off. I asked her one of those times, and she said she wanted to feel better about herself. Okay, but why now after years together? Why such a drastic and sudden change? The lies began to accumulate. Small things she used to tell me in detail now became vague answers. Once I asked her where she had gone after work. She paused, and then said she had gone to the pharmacy, but the bag in the car was from a clothing store. Another day, she said she had a headache and did not want to talk, but she spent the whole night on her cell phone, laughing to herself. I began to notice that the cell phone became an extension of her body, always in her hand, always with the screen facing down. Notifications silenced. Password changed. My internal alarm went off. You know that sixth sense? That is it. It started to scream, and I ignored it. She called me paranoid. She thought everything was in my head. Work stress. But something inside me screamed that something was wrong. It was not just paranoia. It was a real feeling, a constant discomfort. I started sleeping badly. I kept remembering the details, reviewing attitudes, trying to find where the change had begun. And as much as I tried, the answer seemed to slip through my fingers. It was as if I was watching the house burn, but pretending it was just a lit candle. A detail that really caught my attention was the time she began to spend in front of the computer. Before, she barely touched her laptop outside of work hours, but suddenly she was always researching something or answering emails. Sometimes she would stay for hours in the office, locked up, and if I entered, she would quickly minimize the window. I tried to pretend it was normal. She is a psychologist. She must be studying. I do not know. But deep down I knew. Everything was very strange, and she was trying too hard to hide something. It was too clear to be just my imagination. The trigger was a Saturday night. We had planned to watch a family movie, and she just said she was tired and went to bed early. But by chance, I went to the living room to get a glass of water and heard her soft voice laughing on the phone. When I approached, she immediately hung up and pretended to be asleep. There, my world turned upside down. The feeling was as if I had been punched in the stomach. I stood in the dark for a few seconds, my heart racing. And it was at that moment when the penny finally dropped. There is something there, and I am going to find out what it is. After that night of the hidden phone call, I decided to stop pretending that everything was fine. But I also knew I could not act impulsively. I needed proof. It was not just for my pride or my anger. It was because if I was right, my whole life was about to fall apart. And if I was wrong, well, then I would just be another paranoid fool. It was then that I installed a spy app on her cell phone. It was not easy, but as an IT technician, I knew exactly how to do it without leaving a trace. It was ugly, yes, but at that moment my sanity depended on it. The first 48 hours were a kick in the chest. Deleted messages, cleared browsing history, deleted calls. She was hiding everything carefully, but even with that, the app managed to extract some conversations from the cloud backup. And it was there that I began to see a name repeating itself, Mauricio. Initially, there was nothing clearly romantic, but the frequency, the timing of the messages, the emojis, it all spoke more than the words. I decided not to confront her yet. I needed more. It was a horrible feeling to see how everything fit together, but at the same time, it gave me focus. I started to follow her discreetly. Yes, I became that guy. He would leave in the car about 10 minutes after her, pretending he was going to sort something out with a client. A couple of times I went to the clinic, and everything seemed normal. Other times she took different routes, stopped in strange places for half an hour, and then continued as if nothing had happened. I wrote everything down, filmed, took photos. I felt like a complete idiot for getting to this point. But when you feel that someone is betraying you, dignity takes a back seat. The truth becomes a priority. I tried to talk discreetly with other mothers from the school, the ones who were always in WhatsApp groups or at events. Of course, I did not get straight to the point. I just asked some questions about the owner of the school, praised the environment, and waited for reactions. It was then that I heard the first remarks. He is nice, too nice. Is he not? The single mothers love him. One of them said, laughing, I saw him talking to your wife as she was leaving. Hey, what a nice chat. It was all a joke, but for me, each comment was a nail in the coffin. The receipts and bank statements began to reveal a strange pattern. Payments in cafes and restaurants that did not match her schedule, app-based rides that ended near the school, even at times when she should not have been there. Small gifts bought in specific stores that never came to me or our son. I knew she was careful, but the truth is that when someone is in love, attention to detail disappears. I gathered all this, organized it into folders, noted down times, dates, places. I was putting together a puzzle that hurt with every piece. And then came the first undeniable confirmation, an audio, probably sent by mistake, in which she said, I think it will be better if we do it outside the school this week. Your voice is becoming very familiar there." When I heard that, I was in shock. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and a sense of betrayal that I could not explain. I turned everything off, leaned against the bedroom wall, and stayed there for a good few minutes, in silence. There was something inside me that wanted to explode, but another part just wanted to disappear. But one thing became clear. Now I was sure. And the war was just beginning. The guy Mauricio. Finally, I began to investigate who this guy was. Owner of the school for a few years, former university professor, single, or, at least, that is what he claimed to be. Always participating in events, always involved with the parents, especially the mothers. His public image was perfect, successful, friendly, cultured. But the more I dug, the more I noticed a pattern of behavior. And worse still, it seemed he knew exactly how to use the school environment to get close to women, including married women. I began to understand that the guy was an experienced manipulator. He had that forced but effective charisma, always with a compliment on the tip of his tongue, always remembering people's names, always with that smile that seems too sincere to be real. I started to remember when he came to greet Camila at a school meeting. The hug was too long, his smile was too wide. At the time, I did not notice anything. But now, looking at everything again with different eyes, the scene became very clear. He was already hooking her there, and I was 2 steps away like a complete idiot. I discovered that he used extracurricular activities as an excuse to keep in touch with their mothers. Camila, for example, began to help organize a school reading project, even without having been officially called to do so. One day, she said he asked for help preparing a psychological brochure for students. The other day, she said she was providing emotional support to the teaching staff. It all made sense, but now it was obvious it was just a pretext. She was interacting with him in a way that went beyond the professional. It was emotional, intimate, personal. I started to map the hidden encounters. One of them was at a cafe near the school, in broad daylight. Another, in the parking lot of a shopping center. They did not kiss in public or anything like that. They were careful, but there was too much physical contact, too many smiles, and too much time. Camila started using that perfume she only wore on special occasions. She wore new clothes to work meetings. That gnawed at my chest. It was like watching a horror movie where you know something horrible is going to happen, but you cannot look away. And worse, the villain was playing the good guy all the time. What killed me was realizing how she talked about him. At home, his name began to appear frequently, always with praise. Mauricio is very intelligent. He has great pedagogical ideas. He helps the teachers a lot. When I realized, he was already part of our daily vocabulary, and that disgusted me. Seeing the admiration in her eyes, the way she spoke about him, that hurt more than if she had simply betrayed me on impulse. It was not just physical. She was falling in love. She was giving away what should have been only mine, and that kept me up at night. The moment when everything made sense was when I saw a photo of them taken by a friend of mine who works at a restaurant. They were at a more distant table, laughing, leaning towards each other. He held her hand on the table. The caption he sent was, "I thought you would want to know." There was no longer any doubt. It was not in my head. It was not an exaggeration. It was real, blatant, and painfully clear. My wife was having an affair with the principal of our son's school, and then I knew she was not going to get away with it cheaply. They were going to pay. After that photo, there was no turning back. It was no longer just a broken heart. It was a matter of honor. But I knew I needed to act with a cool head, without outbursts, without early confrontation. I wanted something equal to the betrayal. I wanted her to feel what I felt, for her world to collapse in public while mine fell in silence. I began to gather everything with greater precision: traces of conversations, receipts, digital trails, photographs. I organized everything like a true dossier. If anyone doubted me, I would have plenty of proof. The first confrontation was planned, but without revealing all the cards. I called her to talk. I told her I felt distant, that I thought she was acting strangely. She hesitated, but denied everything. She said she was just stressed with work and Lucas's school. The victim face she put on almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. When I mentioned that I thought she was too close to Mauricio, she froze for a second. That millisecond confirmed everything for me. But she quickly changed her tone and said, "You are making things up." Her audacity gave me even more strength to continue. I pretended to believe her. I pretended to feel relieved. I spent the next few days being the most understanding husband in the world. I brought her coffee in bed. I was affectionate. I listened to her complaints with a smile. Meanwhile, every word she said disgusted me more. It was like living in a play, except I had already read the script and knew exactly how it would end. She had no idea what she was doing. What she did not know was that at our son's graduation, an event full of parents, teachers, family, and students, I would display everything. Right there, on stage, in front of everyone, I began to plan the details calmly. I knew she would be there, beautiful, composed, proud of her son. I knew he would be there too, the school's beloved, the host of the event. I had already written a short speech, something that at first sounded like a thank you, but line by line turned into a real sermon. I also prepared a video with excerpts from the messages, photographs, and even audio. Nothing vulgar, but enough to make it clear to anyone there what the two of them were doing behind my back. Everything timed, everything calculated. I spoke with the graduation organizers and offered to say a few words on behalf of the parents. They said it would be great. After all, I was always seen as a present, participative, and polite father. No one suspected anything. I was the last guy who would make a scene. Precisely for this reason, it would be even more shocking. I set up a flash drive with everything. I rehearsed what I was going to say, and every night, while she slept next to me, I looked at her and thought, "You have no idea the storm that is coming, do you?" And that, in a way, gave me peace. The day before graduation, she was very excited. She bought a new dress, got her nails done, and styled her hair. She came to show me everything and said she wanted us to shine together, as parents. Her poker face was a spectacle in itself. I smiled, praised her, and held back the vomit in my throat. Everything was ready. The next day, she would shine, but not in the way she expected. And Mauricio, well, he was going to find out what happens when you mess with the wrong family. The day of the graduation arrived with that festive atmosphere. The children were excited, the parents full of pride. Camila was radiant, dressed as if she were the star of the night. And, ironically, she would be. We arrived early. We took pictures with Lucas, who could not stop smiling. And there he was too, Mauricio, greeting everyone with that air of superiority, as if he owned the world. I pretended to be understanding, but I saw through that mask. I greeted him as if nothing had happened. He did not even suspect that in less than an hour his world would come crashing down. When they announced that some parents would give speeches, Camila looked at me with pride. I thought she was going to talk about our son, praise the school environment, and thank her for her education. And yes, that is exactly how I started. I took the microphone and took a deep breath. Good evening, everyone. It is an honor to be here watching our son graduate, surrounded by such special people. But today I did not come just as a father. I came as a man, as a husband, as someone who believed in family. The audience's attention was immediate. Some smiled, others noticed the change in tone. I continued, keeping calm. For months I lived a lie. While I thought my wife was helping at the school, she was being seduced. While I was taking care of our son, she was busy maintaining a relationship with the man who should guarantee the integrity of the school environment. The silence that followed was deafening. Camila's eyes widened like saucers. She tried to get up, but I raised my hand. Calm down, I am not done yet. The tension was almost palpable. Some parents began to whisper. The principal, white as a sheet, was about to deliver the final blow. I took the remote and turned on the projector. On the screen, excerpts of messages, audios, photographs appeared, nothing explicit, but everything was very clear. Enough to leave no doubt about what was happening between Camila and Mauricio. Is this the real example our children receive? Is this what you support? Is this the type of man who runs this school? The place turned into chaos. Shouts, gasps, a teacher covering a child's eyes. Camila began to cry, begging me to stop. Mauricio tried to leave the room, but two parents blocked the door. It was the end. Our son looked at me, confused, not really understanding. I knew that part was the hardest, but I would rather he knew the truth than grow up surrounded by lies. Camila fell to her knees, crying, begging for forgiveness. Gabriel, please. Not like this. Please. But I no longer felt anything for her at that moment. Only relief. I looked into her eyes and said, "You destroyed our family. Now admit it before everyone." I took Lucas by the hand and got off the stage. I left her there, kneeling, surrounded by critical gazes. We left the school without looking back. In the car, Lucas was silent. I took his hand and told him we would talk later, calmly, but he should never, ever accept lies at home. I did not know how it would be from that moment on. I only knew that night would leave an impression on everyone who was there, and that Camila, so proud at the beginning of the night, had been reduced to what she really was, an exposed traitor without masks. The next morning, the scandal had already spread to the four corners of the neighborhood and beyond. I received messages from dozens of parents, some of support, others surprised, and others simply curious. But most of them congratulated me. You had the courage to do what many only dream of. The school became chaotic. There was a father who demanded an emergency meeting, a mother who canceled enrollment, teachers who wanted to understand what was going to happen. Camila was expelled from the school's parent group almost immediately, and Mauricio disappeared. Literally, he did not show up the next day. The rumors said he had gone on a trip for a few days. Coward. At home, the atmosphere was like a funeral. Camila cried all the time. She tried to talk to me, but I did not answer. She tried to justify it with things like, "It was just a need. I felt lonely. I never thought I would lose you like this." Pathetic. After everything she did, after hiding, lying, manipulating, she still had the nerve to play the victim. In one of her attempts at conversation, she even said, "I was going to end everything after graduation, I swear." As if that changed anything. As if the cheating had an expiration date, and that would redeem her. The hardest part was talking to Lucas. I waited a few days until he was calmer. I took him for a walk, just the two of us, and I was very honest, careful. I explained that Mom and Dad were going through a difficult time, but that it was not his fault. He listened to everything in silence, holding back tears, and when he finally spoke, he simply asked, "Does she still love me?" That finished me. I told him yes, because despite everything, she was still his mother and he did not need to bear the weight of her mistakes. But inside, I just wanted to forget she existed. The school, in turn, tried to silence the case. They issued a generic statement saying that the principal would resign for personal reasons and that the administration was being restructured, but no one bought it. Some parents filed formal complaints. I heard that other mothers began to share stories similar to mine about Mauricio's behavior. His castle was crumbling, and knowing that my attitude triggered this was, in a way, gratifying. It was not just a personal revenge. It was as if I had exposed a parasite that was hiding under the facade of an exemplary professional. In the following days, Camila tried all sorts of approaches, notes, messages. Even her parents came to talk to me, asking for a second chance for her. But I had already made a decision. Dignity cannot be negotiated. Not after everything I saw, everything I heard, everything I felt. She even suggested we go to couples therapy. The same woman who was hiding an affair behind her back now wanted to fix everything with a conversation. Too late. I looked at her and said, "You had all the opportunities in the world and you chose to take advantage of every single one of them." At the end of that week, I grabbed some clothes, my notebook, and went to my parents' house with Lucas. I said I needed time, but deep down I knew that time was definitive. Camila was left alone in our apartment, crying, begging, trying to call every day. I blocked her, not out of anger, but for self-preservation. Sometimes, to survive, we need to close the door tightly. And that is what I did. The first few days away from home were strange. It was as if I was floating, anesthetized. I slept badly, ate little, spent hours staring at the ceiling, unable to think about anything clearly. My parents tried to help, but they knew there were limits. You cannot fix a broken heart with a ready-made piece of advice. Lucas, on the other hand, surprised me. Even without understanding everything, he showed absurd maturity. He hugged me out of nowhere, told me he loved me, and that was what kept me on my feet. For him, I needed to recover. Explaining everything to him was the hardest part. I could not hide it completely. Children feel. I just tried to dose out the truth. I said that Mom and Dad were going through a bad time, and that maybe it would be better to live separately for a while. He asked if it was his fault. I almost cried at that moment. I stood firm and said no, that he was the best thing that had ever happened to me, that nothing that was happening was his responsibility. And I promised that, despite everything, I would always be there. Always. Over time, I got back into a routine. I took on more work. I immersed myself in remote service so as not to think so much. I started running early in the morning, more to tire my body than for my health. Running became therapy. There, the first real smiles returned. When the mind stopped going in circles and the body simply moved forward. To have control over my own life again, even in small aspects, gave me a sense of power. I had been betrayed, humiliated, yes, but I was not destroyed. I was alive, and with time, pain turns into strength. Friends and family were fundamental in this process. One or another even joked that I should write a book or a screenplay. Others said I had done what many only dream of, getting revenge with class. But I knew it was not that simple. Pain is not taken away by applause. It took me time to understand that overcoming is not forgetting. It is learning to live without it. I started to rediscover myself. Simple things like cooking for Lucas, binge watching a series alone, going out for coffee without a time to return. Silly details, but they added color to the new life. Camila continued to try to contact us. I kept her blocked, except for the open channel about Lucas. Objective conversations, with no room for manipulation. She cried during drop-offs and visits, tried to start a conversation, but I did not give her the chance. I was colder, more direct, and she slowly realized that there was no going back. That forgiveness may even exist one day, but trust died there, in front of everyone, on graduation day. And when trust dies, no marriage survives, no matter how much nostalgia tried to deceive us. It was then that I understood. That end was not my failure, it was my new beginning. Every day, I was one step further from the chaos and closer to peace. I began to plan a trip just for Lucas and me. Maybe a new home, a real new beginning, not on impulse, but by choice. And for the first time in a long time, I looked in the mirror and recognized myself again, not as the cheated guy, but as the man who had the courage to get up and move on with his head held high. If someone had told me a year ago that my life would be turned upside down by betrayal, I would have laughed. We never think it is going to happen to us, and when it does, the impact is devastating. But today, looking back, I realized that moment was a turning point. It hurt a lot, of course. It took away my ground, my hunger, my sleep, and my faith in people, but it also gave me something I did not know I needed, a real chance to start over. Without lies, without a facade. Just me, the truth, and everything I wanted to build from it. If I could go back in time, maybe I would have paid more attention to the signs. Not because I think I could have avoided cheating, because those who cheat choose to cheat, but because I would have prepared myself better emotionally. We trust people too much and forget to listen to ourselves. That inner voice, that discomfort, is not paranoia, it is a warning. And ignoring these signs is like trying to cover the sun with a sieve. An hour burns, and when it burns, it leaves marks. If anyone reading this is going through something similar, I can only say one thing. Do not dismiss yourself. Do not lose your identity trying to save what is already rotten. At first, I blamed myself a lot, thinking about where I had gone wrong and what I could have done differently. But you know what? I did everything right. I was present. I was loyal. I was a partner. The one who made the mistake, the one who destroyed it, was her. And as painful as it was to accept, it was liberating. It was not my fault. And if you are in this, maybe it is not your fault either. Cheating is not just about sex or lies. It is about the silent murder of trust. And without trust, there is no love that can survive. Today, I value my peace much more than any relationship. I understood that being alone can be 1,000 times better than being with someone who belittles you, erases you, or deceives you. I prefer to sleep peacefully than to share a bed with someone who lies looking me in the eyes. About revenge. Look, at first I thought I needed to destroy her and him. But what I did was not out of hatred, it was for justice. They exposed me to the cruelest pain. I just gave them back the truth in the same way. And I do not regret it because what happened at that graduation was not just about me. It was about giving a voice to all those who have ever been betrayed and silenced, about showing that dignity has value and that the truth, well placed, is the most powerful weapon there is. Today I close this chapter of my life with less weight and a lighter soul. I do not know what the future holds for me, but I know what I no longer accept. The pain turned into strength. The betrayal turned into a lesson, and the end turned into a new beginning. Because in the end, what destroyed me was not what she did, it was what I did not know. Now I know, and that has set me free.